Welcome to the Yeshiva Shalmaila. This is David Lichtenstein, and this week we have an interesting program. It's 30 years. We had big machlekes in Klal Yisrael. On one side we had Maran Harav Shach, on the other side we had the Chabadske Rebbe, the great Ramash, and they had strong differences of opinion. So let's look at it so many years later, hear from Talmidim of both, and try to understand what they argued about. And this program will be done with the greatest derech eretz. These are Maharei Kodesh, and these were machlokes that came from Roimamus. They came from differences of Hashkafik, but they're important for us to understand what were the differences, and are they relevant today? We will hear from Rabbi Yissachar Lederman. He's a brother-in-law of the Rosh Yeshiva of Baltimore. He's a Talmud Muvik of Rav Shach. He learned from him for many years. Rav Shach was mamana him as on many shlichus, and he made him Rosh Mosdos, various Mosdos. He was very Mikurav. We will have from Chabad, Rabbi Chaim Dalfin, who wrote many Sfarim. He wrote the Lubavitcher Rebbe and Rabbi, Lubavitcher Rebbe and Rav Hutna. He wrote about the Lubavitcher Rebbe and Rav Soloveitchik, and many, best-selling Sfarim. And on the actual machlokes that they had then, do we still have anything? Is there anything left today? Any remnants of this disagreement today? And even there we have a split. We asked this question to Reb Shmuel Kamenetsky, how do we look at Chabad today? And here's his response.
We should truly consider them our brothers.
Here was Reb David Cohn's response.
I don't even think you need my comment. Of course they should be embraced. They're our brothers. The very fact that some of them the fact that many of them believe that the Rebbe was Mashiach in no way excludes them from Klal Yisrael. Throughout the ages, there have been people who had this kind of hashkafa. It's not a psul. You're not mechuyev to believe it. So that is not a psul at all. The only people who deserve richuk are people who are pekosim, and it's very difficult to be Mikurav them. There are unfortunately those who believe in what is it, Alakai Milmata. Those individuals, they need richuk. But as a whole, the whole Lubavitcher movement, who spoke about richuk? The fact that some people resented that they believe the Rebbe's Mashiach has nothing to do with richuk.
Amazing. They're our brothers. You heard the psak. He was insulted at the question, Reb David Cohn.
Here was Ramendel Shafran, the leading Chassidish Paisik in Eretz Yisrael.
I think everybody that really travels is Mechabed Chabad for what they do. And they mizalten about what I think they do wrong. I don't think there's a bad attitude to Chabad that someone is, against. They're doing something. They're doing something very good. Whoever goes to all kinds of medinas in Hong Kong and there and here and the old Stockholm in India and all kinds of medinas, they always tell about Chabad, how they help them there,
Havas Yisrael is nifladik.
Very good. They're doing something very good. And whatever they're doing good is very good. And what they're doing no good is no good. And we don't have to be machshir things that we don't like because they're doing something good. And we don't have to be mezalzel what they're doing good. I think the attitude is pretty good to them. It's not bad. Nobody hates them or nobody. We don't like their hashkafas. It's good. We don't like their hashkafas. They don't have to. They can't further bitoveya, accept my hashkafas and accept what I am because I'm doing tovus with Klal Yisrael. You're doing tovus. You're very good, and we chabed it, and it's very nice. On the other hand, what we don't like. A person can't further from someone hechsher on everything he does because he says something good.
And mitzad sheni, here's Reb Hershel Shechter, a real, a litvak. Let's hear what he has to say.
There's a big group in Chabad who pray to the Rebbe, so that's clearly not permissible. That's what we call avodah zarah. The others are very angegläubt that the Rebbe was Mashiach. So look, we hope he was Mashiach. Can you hear us? Whoever Mashiach is, we'd like him to come soon. I don't know. The yeshiva world, I think, is upset. Why? There's a small group that they're afraid may be getting bigger who pray to the Rebbe. So that's terrible. One thing leads to the other. If you keep on hacking that the Rebbe is Mashiach, then the next thing you know is that's what Yoshke also Huish. So the second name that he has that begins with a C, that means Mashiach. So that the emunah that he was Mashiach led them to pray to him, and that's what led to the whole disaster. Today is December 25th when I'm talking, so it's what to be concerned about. The overemphasis on Mashiach is going to lead to Avodah Zarah. In the past it did. In the past, in Jewish history, with Shabtai Tzvi and other movements, it did lead to Avodah Zarah. So that's what the yeshiva world is concerned about.
And even though it's so many years later, and if anything, it would appear to be dissipating, nothing has changed in that respect. I don't think it's dissipating. I think the people praying to the Rebbe, my impression is that there are more people praying to the Rebbe. There are more people who believe that the Rebbe is Mashiach. I think it's a bigger percentage now than years ago. Maybe I'm wrong.
And from the Sephardi part of the world, our great brethren, here is Reb David Yosef, the son of the Rishon LeZion, the head of Sephardish Mosdos in Eretz Yisrael, by the Sephardim, how they articulate any Hashkafik differences today we may have with Chabad.
It's a very difficult question. But I want to tell you, first of all, Chabad in the world did a great job. What they did, no one did. What the Rebbe did with Am Yisrael, with Kiruv, no one did. I met rabbis from Chabad that they live not in Miami, Florida, or in New York. They live in Siberia, 30, 40 degrees below the zero Fahrenheit and Celsius. They live in places, poor places, and they walk L'Shem Shamayim. What they do in the world is great, from one side. From the other side, I don't agree with people that say the Rebbe is still alive. I think it's not allowed to say that. And in Eretz Israel, many people, Lubavitch people, they believe that the Rebbe died. They say the Rebbe died. And they write about him, Zchuto Yagen Aleinu, Zecher Tzadik Livracha. They write in his books, Zecher Tzadik Livracha. And the people that believe he's still alive, I wish after so many years, they will open their eyes and they will believe about the truth. But as I said, from the other side, we have to see the good and not to belong to one side. We cannot close our eyes from seeing what great things Chabad did. So we have to convince them, to make the people that still think the Rebbe still alive, to convince them that they are wrong. It's a very bad idea. It's against Judaism, against the Torah. But from the other side, we have to see the good things Chabad are doing, like I said.
So our program today is, what were their Hashkafik differences, and are their disagreements still relevant? Before we go, I want to talk about Seid Var Torah on the Bein HaMitzarim. This year, Tisha B'Av is on Shabbos, so it's Nidcha to Sunday, and the Shulchan Aruch actually discusses it in Taf Kuf Nun Beis, and it says that in Chal Tisha B'Av on Sunday, you're allowed to eat meat, drink wine, even by the Suda HaMafsekes, and you know how much? Umayla al Shulchanai Kesudas Shleima Be'es Malchusai. The famous expression, you could eat like Sudas Shleima B'Shaitai. Interesting. The Mishnah Berurah brings two opinions. He says, the Magen Avram says, even though you could eat whatever you want, you should sit, all the Daiva Nefesh should be without Simcha, and you shouldn't sit with friends. On the other hand, the great Tfor Shor, right, argues on him, and he says that if somebody sits Shabbos with friends and they dance and they sing, you could do that when Tisha B'Av is Chal Shabbos, or if Nidchet is Sunday, or if it's Erev Tisha B'Av is Shabbos. Either way, we don't do anything different. So we see we have here a very fundamental machlokes, and I want to try to explain it, give a little bit of a time in it. And I additionally want to say, the Pri Tzaddik asks an interesting question in Dvarim. He says, when the Gemara says, like, Suda Shloime B'Shaitai, he says, Rashi brings, right, that Avram Avinu made the biggest Sudas, much bigger than Shloime Sudas. He says, so why does the Gemara say, and the Shulchan Aruch, that on Erev Tisha B'Av, that Chal B'Shabbos, you can make Suda Shloime B'Shaitai, it should say make bigger, make like Sudas Avram B'Shaitai. And he says a teretz. And I want to give a different possible answer, and I think it's very relevant to our life. And I heard a word from Rabbi Yaakov Feitman. He said over from Rav Hutta, something beautiful. It's actually, I found it afterwards, something similar to it in the Rishimas Lev. He says, when Shlomo HaMelech built the Beis HaMikdash, and when Hurdas built Bayis Sheni, it was a gorgeous building. And the Gemara says in Baba Basra and Avdalit, it was Avnei Kuchoshish, it was made out of marble, and it was like green and white marble, like the Gali Hayam, K'udvasa the Yama. So the Gemara says, first they wanted to cover it with gold. Make it a beautiful gold, like the Dome of the Rock today is gold. They want to make the walls gold, cover it. But the Chazal didn't want. And they said, no, leave it as the waves of the sea. So Rav Hutner said something beautiful. He said that at the end of Parshas Bereshis, it says, Vayinochem Hashema, that he made man. Goy echad sholas Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha. He says, doesn't the Rabbi Shalom, you're believing God? Yeah. Does he know everything? Yeah. So how could he regret? How could he not know? How could he feel bad that he made man? Didn't he see that in the beginning? So he said to him, I want to ask you something. Did you have a son? He said, yeah. He said, did you make a party when he was born? Yeah. He said, don't you know that one day he's going to die? So the guy answered him, but b'shas chedvasa, and that when he's born I'll rejoice, and one day he'll die. That'll be a sad day, but everything has its proper time. So Rabbi Yochanan told him, he said the same thing by Kaviyachal. Beis chedvasa, he rejoices when he rejoices. Everything has its proper time. So Rav Hutner said, that's Pshat in Tehillim. It says, B'soi galov ata teshabchem, when the waves roar, the Rabbeinu Shalom praises them. So the Radak explains, teshabchem. What does it mean? So Rav Hutner said, every wave, it comes to a peak. It crescendo. How long does a wave last? 30 seconds, a minute, a 2-minute wave, and then it crashes. So why are you roaring if you're going to crash down to earth 2 minutes later? And the answer is, when I roar, and when my time will be done, I will crash down. But that won't stop me. That doesn't stop me from roaring when I have the opportunity. The Soigalov, when the waves lift their voice and they raise up, Ata Teshavchem, Rabbeinu Shalom praises them. They seized the moment. They lived in their moment of glory. They didn't look to tomorrow, what would ultimately happen. So Rav Hutner said, he said, when the bias was built, they knew that it would be destroyed one day. Chazal knew. So they said, you know what? Make it like the waves of the ocean. Today it's fantastic. Today it's a makam kapara, it's makam shchina. Tomorrow it won't be. Let's rejoice today. Beis chedvasa, beis ivlasa. So I want to say, Tisha B'Av is on Shabbos. We're eating the Suda. How could you rejoice? You know that by the Suda Samafsekis you can eat basa v'yayid. You know, in a few minutes it's going to be ice. What are you rejoicing for? And you know what the answer is? What is the Lashon of the Gemara and the Shulchan Aruch? You should eat like Shloime b'Shaitai. Shloime knew the Beis HaMikdash would be destroyed. Shloime knew his kingdom one day would be gone. At the end, he was only Melech al Maklei. He lost his kingdom at the end. But you know what? B'Shaitai, he made Sudas Shloime b'Shaitai. So on Tisha B'Av, that's Chal on Shabbos, what does the Tfur Shar say? Rejoice, Basar, Yayin, without diving lave. That's the Jewish way, he says. Beis chedvasa chedvasa. Magen Avraham argues. Right? Mishnah Berurah brings both. That's Achron. He brings the Tvua Shor. That was always our minig, that on Shabbos, but wherever we went, we ate wine and meat, and we rejoiced on Shabbos. Beis chedvasa chedvasa. There's a story we've said before, that the Rosh HaKol, Rabbi Kivega, became frei. This happened, Haskalah blew across the world after the French Enlightenment. And according to the story, Rabbi Kivega fired him. He used to be the Baltikeya in the Shul. He was Rosh HaKol in the Baltikeya, and Rabbi Kivega fired him. So this guy went to the Duke, the Ferdinand of Posen in Germany, Stamanishkin Greisai of Yisrael. And he told him, I was fired, I was thrown out, I can't blow shofar because I became more secular, because I started studying in whatever it may be. So they called Rabbi Kivega to a case in front of a hearing in front of the Duke. And this guy said, the rabbi, he's against being progressive, and so the Duke said, no, are you talking against education? And so Rabbi Kivega said, listen, what's the holiest day of the year? He told this Prussian guy. The guy said, I know, Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. He said he was educated. Rabbi Kivega said, he used to blow on Rosh Hashanah. Now, you know what? We're going to give him to blow on the holiest day of the year to show our value of education. At the end of Yom Kippur, we blow one big blast. He could have that. So this Rosh HaKol is looking at Rabbi Kivega. What, you gave me all the deraisis, the 100 kolos, with a minig after the zman. It's most already chayil to blow the tekiah, like it's like a joke. So he starts to talk. He says, I'm going to try to explain to the Duke the deraisis, drabanans made. So he just looks at the guy and he says, no, it's not a fair trade. He's just fooling you. So he says, why? He says, because on Rosh Hashanah you blow 100 times. It's true, Yom Kippur is a holy day, but you just blow one time. So the guy looks at this Rosh HaKol. He says, I don't understand something. He's giving you the shofar, the ram's horn in your hand. He says, yeah. He says, if you have it in your hand, blow 100 times. Blow as long as you want, as loud as you want. Right? But what's the takeaway? And from Shalom Shvadran, use this once. The Rabbi Shalom gives us each 70 years, maybe in Mikurav Shmeinim Shana, a short amount of time, the amount of time of a breaking wave, of a flower, a flowering tree in eternity. That's how much time. He gave you the shofar in your hand. Are we going to live fearful lives? What about if this happens? What about he said, she said? What is this one's going to say if I did this? Or are we going to leave the lies to reveal our potential? Use this moment. Are we going to blow that shofar with all the energy we have? That's the opinion of the Tvua Shor. It's Erev Tisha B'Av. Our whole lives are Erev Tisha B'Av. But you know what? Even by Sudas HaMafsekes, Basa v'yayin, because you have the shofar now in your hand. Blow as hard as you can. And what's the lesson for us? Tomorrow there will be problems. Guaranteed. How do I know that? Mesilas Yesharim brings that if a person has 40 days without joy, without trouble in their life, they could be assured that they got their Olam Haba in this world. So there's always going to be problems tomorrow. I promise you. But you know what? Right now it's wonderful. So let's rejoice now. And there's a powerful lesson from these days. We have Zman Simchaseinu, and we have Bein HaMetzarim. And what is the Torah telling you? Don't each time live that moment. Think of the way Chazal were kaveya, a siman, a whole siman, and there's a very few simanim in Shulchan Aruch that only have one halacha. There's only a handful of simanim. But in Reish Chavav, a bracha when you see a flowering, the flowering trees come out. Well, think of it. How long does that flower last? A day, a week, 5 days, a few days. We gave it a bracha. The flower's only here for a short time. But for the time it's here, what does the Torah say? Celebrate it. Roar like a lion, like a wave. I mean, let's be honest. our entire presence here in this Olam Hasiya is in eternity is even shorter than the crashing wave, the minute of the crashing wave. And what does the Torah say? But make that bracha. When you have that flower, when you have the microphone in your hand, sing your heart out. When you can hug or kiss or bless, do it with your whole heart. Dance with all your energy for those few minutes. That's the message. Erev Tisha B'Av, Shechal B'Shabbos. It's Shabbos, and today it's Shabbos. So scream like Udvasa the Yama. When you're in a moment, don't think about yesterday, and don't think about tomorrow. Roar for the moment when it's a good moment. When you're learning, when we have, even if it's an hour a day, that hour it should be Tairasayim Nasai. Learn like Ben Azai. When you hug your child, hug him at that moment, like you'll never see him again, like it's the most. When you look at your spouse, like this is that moment. We could relive the chuppah. I heard over from the great Lubavitcher Rebbe. He said a very nice touch. He said, "Im ein anili mili." He said, every person is unique. Every person has their service, their avodah. He says, "Im ein anili." If you're not going to do the service that's unique to you, mili, who's going to do it? It's yours. There's nobody else who could replace your voice. The imloi achshav. And this, if not this moment, what other moment will there be? Chaim says, he brings from the Zohar HaKadosh, from Dari, says that there are tough reish pei tzirufim of the Shem Havayin every minute. And they're constantly mishtana. There's no two moments in time that were ever the same, the Chaim says. So the Shrim says, Imloi achshavem, this is your moment. This is the only moment this moment will never exist again. Seize this moment. Beis chedvasa chedvasa. They gave us Bein HaMitzarim, and they gave us every time has its own time. Rejoice in the times of rejoicing. Live each moment for what it is. One of the messages of the way Chazal shtel davek the itim of Klal Yisrael. Before we go to our guest, I'm going to ask the riddle of the week. Here's our first riddle of the week. On Erev Yom Kippur it says, Mitzvah lechel laharbeis besuda, in Chaim and Tafresh Dalad. It's a Gemara Numa and Daf Pei Aleph. And it says, V'nisem esnafshei sechem betisha b'erev. The Gemara says, V'chi tisha b'erev b'sanin, el basirim b'sanin loy melacha, kol oichel v'shoyse b'tshi. If you eat the day before Yom Kippur, ma'ila of akasav kilu tzana chi vasiri. So it's a mitzvah to eat Erev Yom Kippur. And some of the poskim, if you look in the Stechem and Merachas Yom Kippur, Siman Aleph, Eis Aleph, and Eid poskim, why do they say, what's the time of the Dikra? Because the Rabbi Shalom wants you to fast a full 24 hours, with Taisis Yom Tif, 25 hours. So he said you should eat Erev Yom Kippur, so that you should be able to fast. And therefore it's a mitzvah to eat Erev Yom Kippur. So the question is, on Erev Tisha B'Av, he says, the Rambam, here's the Lashon Rambam, Parakeh of Tain, it says, Miyameinu lo yachalnu b'Erev Tisha B'Av tafshil afilu shel adashim. They ate minute amounts. So here's the question. Tisha B'Av is also a 25-hour fast. On Yom Kippur, what do Mefarshim say? Why is there a din to eat Erev Yom Kippur so that you should be able to fast? Why on Tisha B'Av don't we find any mitzvah to eat Erev Tisha B'Av? That is our first riddle of the week. Now I'll ask you a riddle, and this is on Parshas Devarim. Lo saguru mipnei ish. Right? It says in the pasuk, a dayan should not be fearful of anybody. He should have a real spine. Right? The Sifri says, Lo saguru mipnei ish. Shema toimer. Maybe you should say, I'm going to be afraid of this person. Shema yarig es b'ni. Maybe he'll destroy my property. The lach is lo saguru mipnei ish. A dayan has to have a spine, and he can't be fearful that one of the litigants that appear in front of him will cause him either physical damage to his children or financial damage. So here's the problem. The halacha is, that on a mitzvah saseh you don't have to give more than Chaim of your money. And the Prima God, the Mishnah Berurah brings it. In the Psicha Kollel Chelik Revi'os it says that even though by a loisa say you do have to give more than your money, that's only by kum vasei. But a lav that's sheval tasei, right? You don't have to be mevazvez yaisa b'chayshun. It's just like buying asei, right? So the question is, why over here does he have to litigate, or does he have to accept to give a psak against somebody who he's afraid of could damage him financially? Let him say, look, I'm sheval tasei, I'm dropping the case, I'm going to be over a loisagur b'pneish. I don't want to have financial damage. And even a bigger pella, what does it say? Even if he says Shema Yari Ges B'ni, there's halachas loisagur b'pneish. What loisagur b'pneish is a lav, right? But if somebody's afraid that they could get killed or their child could get killed, it's pikuach nefesh. Pikuach nefesh is deicha kala Torah kula. It's not one of the gimel chamurais loisagur b'pneish. How could the Rambam bring Shema Yari Ges B'ni? There's halach of loisagur b'pneish. These are the two riddles of the week. At the end of this program, we will play the winners of last week's riddle. We will play the winners of last week. I just want to remind you, we have often a number of winners. So we sort of put them in a hat and we say, okay, these 5 or 10 people got the right answer. We're going to choose this one. So it's not necessarily, if your name doesn't come up, it's not indicative that you didn't have the right answer. It just means that there was more than one who had the right answer. Let's go to our guests. We have the honor of having with us on the phone from Bnei Brak, Rabbi Yissachar Lederman, a Talmud of the Mir for many, many years, a Talmud of Panovej, the Yeshiva, the Kollel, of a very big Mikurav with Maran Harav Shach, Zecher Tzadik Levracha. Welcome, Rav Lederman.
Oh, thank you.
So, Rabbi Lederman, what was the hisnagdus, hashkafically, that Rav Shach had to Chabad? Could you try to explain that to us?
Now, let me precede this by saying that in spite of everything that will be said or will not be said, Rav Shach and the Rebbe cooperated in the matter of Bali Tshuva. I represented and represent Rav Shach in Bali Tshuva institution called Arachim. Have you ever heard of it?
Yes, I did. Yes.
Yeah. Now there is a book by the head of Arachim called Incredible.
Okay.
Volume 2 has a description of the cooperation. The cooperation insisted of Rav Shach asking the Rebbe that he should make available the services of Batei Chabad to Bali Tshuva.
Really? How interesting.
Yeah, the book is at my bedside, and it's available any place in New York that you want. It's called Incredible 2. And somebody is knocking on the door, and my wife is davening mincha.
So let me ask you a question, Rabbi Lederman.
Yeah.
How did they cooperate? In what way? Like, how did they communicate?
Well, the director of Arachim went to New York and expressed a request of Rav Shach to speak to the Rebbe.
Really?
The book is at my bedside, and I cannot guarantee that I can find it on the spot.
Okay.
But it's there.
So what was the hisnagdus? We know that Rav Shach had certain hisnagdus to Chabad. Do you know what it was?
Well, this is a very touchy question because there are many aspects to it. So I wanted to start out by saying that was this cooperation, which means that there were some points at which he agreed, and the other points which are not. There were several aspects of the Isnagdus. One day, the Isnagdus, the date that was given as 20 years ago is not precise, but there is something to it. What is to it is as follows. The messianic message that came out of 770 was something which Rav Shach could not tolerate.
there were several points. One major point was that he was this messianic message carried with it a message also of immortality, and Rav Shach was, as everybody knew that nobody is immortal, and he was very, very afraid that the Chassidei Chabad will lose their Yiddishkeit when the Rebbe passes away.
Okay.
This was a major and first consideration that he had. It happened, I don't know how in America, it happened in Israel, I have no statistics, it could be 5 people or 50 people or whatever. This was item number 1. And item number 2, the Messianic message also carried authority authority above authorities. And here in Eretz Israel, we are dealing. When I say we, at this point includes Rav Shach, dealing with the government, and it's a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week struggle. And Rav Shach and those that followed him followed a certain doctrine of how to deal with it. With the situation in order to achieve whatever is achievable. Now, somebody who mixes in and has different ideas without having the authority of people who voted for his party, it interferes with the whole procedure. This is like if you ever heard of how to sail against the wind. Ever hear of how do you sail against the wind?
You tack against the wind. You go to the side, right?
You go to the side, but somebody who is not aware of this seems somebody that is going to decide and says, "Yeah, where are you going? Where are you going? You're supposed to get to the north. You're going to the west."
Right.
And this kind of interference, this kind of telling people here what should be done or what should not be done, is something that Rav Shach could not tolerate.
Interesting. But this has nothing to do with the Messianic message. This is a different point.
This has nothing to do with the Messianic message, right? However, the authority of the interference leans on the Messianic message, and because of this, it has more of a destructive force.
I understand. It gave him a bigger voice, or it gave him more confidence.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also, there are all kinds of little things of how to deal with non-religious dignitaries, which Rav Shach felt very much we should keep away from them, and Chabad was very much to close with them. This whole approach that Chabad has of being an integral part of the entire society is something which Rav Shach very much disliked.
In other words, Rav Shach wanted it to be sort of Heinam Levada Dishkain.
Yeah, and not only he wanted, this was the policy of not only him. He was the leader of all the Gdolim who had a certain policy as to how to conduct ourselves toward the non-religious government, the non-religious majority. And Chabad had different ideas, and Rav Shach didn't like it. Another thing is which he didn't like was that Zayin Kislev or whatever the date is. He was very much against the declaration of any Yom Tovim that were not declared by the Anshe Knesset Gdolah. He felt there is no such an authority does not exist.
Interesting. And what else? Anything else?
Well, look, this is more or less, if you expand it...
So let me go back on it. Let me go back to the first one.
Yes,
one was immortality. He was afraid that the Hasidim would lose their Yiddishkeit because of the sense of immortality. So I would ask now, it's 30 years since the Rebbe's Ptira, right? And the Hasidus has doubled or tripled in size. I think now they say there's over 5,000 Chabad houses around the world, right? They say that they touch, millions of Yidden every year. Looking back, does that seem to have been a concern that was justified, or in retrospect, it seems
in retrospect may have not been justified, but then
okay.
Rav Shach never claimed prophecy.
Okay, you're saying we're being Monday morning quarterbacks. We're looking back, and it's not fair. So let me ask you another question. The doctrine of how to deal with the government. He felt that he was sort of mixing into Israeli politics without knowing, which is very interesting, because I think the same thing is happening right now again with have a lot of American Rosh Yeshivas.
Yeah, you're telling me. Look, sir, you're telling me one of them is my brother-in-law.
Who is your brother-in-law?
Rabbi Feldman.
Oh, from Baltimore. I didn't know that.
Yes.
So you're saying that there's a whole bunch that are supporting Peleg. And the Rosh Yeshiva and the Gedolim in Eretz Yisrael said, "Why are you coming here to my neighborhood and telling us what to do? Like you're sitting in America and you're telling us in Eretz Yisrael how to behave." It's a similar type of an argument.
Yeah, well, but it is much worse in both cases. The Peleg thing, this or Chabad, are based on the assumption that we are sitting in a situation of peace, and there are disagreements. The doctrine of all the Gdolim is that we are in a daily, hourly, secondly fight with the others. And if you have a war, you cannot have two commanders.
I understand. So they wanted that the Lubavitcher Rebbe should not be the commander, and he should go under Rav Shach?
He should not go under Rav Shach. No, he should attend to what he's doing, and to what he's doing, as you said, is a great job, and leave the commanding to the people who are commanding forces and being shot at every day.
Okay. And let me go now to your third thing. You said that being an integral part of society towards the non-religious, well, the Chabadsker Rebbe, his position was, he said, 90%, and I'm paraphrasing, but basically 90% of Yiddishkeit is frei, 10% is frum. So he said, when your brother's house is on fire, you run in to save. So I think being integrated in part of society, they send their boys out at a very young age to be Mikurav, to put tefillin, to build mikvahs, to go to college campuses. That is the essence of their mission. They believe it's Eis Vasis Hashem Eferu Terasecha, it's as man of Sakanas Nefashis. There are more Jews, and this is a true fact, there are more Jews who have been lost now to integration than have died in the Holocaust. So why would Rav Shach be opposed to that?
No, because it does not. Look, first you are asking me a question that I really may not be able to answer. Maybe yes. He did not believe in the effectiveness of what you are saying. There is proof. The English said the proof of the pudding is in the eating. The only way how we see how we are able to, in this country, to keep our noses above the water and get whatever rights we could possibly squeeze out is by Knesset representation. There is no other way. If we would not have a Knesset representation, we would be non-existent. We have no standing in front of the courts. As I told my brother-in-law many times, if the Bailis trial would have been taken place in front of the Israeli Supreme Court, he would be hanging. Therefore, the only way how we can get anywhere is by increasing our representation. And the Chabad never contributed to this.
But that's a good point. Rabbi Lederman, respectfully, I think that's a good point, but that's a new point. I want to go back to what you mentioned. You said they are an integral part of society, and their attitude towards the non-religious majority is to try to become part of the society and to try to convince them to.
Well, I agreeing with you, but as I said, the proof of the pudding is in the eating, and the eating is not here.
Wait, but Rabbi Lederman, let me go first to Chutz La'aretz, then go to Eretz Yisrael. In Chutz La'aretz, it's mamish rabim heishiv meyavin, and they've made hundreds of thousands of balei tshuva. Are you saying in Eretz Yisrael, Chabad has not had the ability to make balei tshuva?
Right. Whatever balei tshuva they have made, I am not aware of. I cannot deny anything. The thing that I do not know. I am sitting for the last 25 years in Arachim as Rav Shach representative, and somehow or other, none of the participants in the seminar were sent there by Chabad.
So his snagness to Chabad, it sounds to me, had to do with, well, the first part we spoke about immortality, but after that was very political, Israeli centric. Like why?
Well,
I'm saying it's not Hasidish or Litvish. It's not limited.
Wait a minute. It's nothing to do with Hasidish and Litvish. Absolutely nothing.
It had to do with Israeli politics, it sounds like.
Yeah,
mostly, right?
Absolutely nothing. Let me tell you, if you remember, I don't know. Look, I was there. I'm still here. When Rav Shach decided to establish the Gila Torah, he was very much aware of the fact that there was to make it here in the fight between Chassidim and Snagdim. And he made an effort, and he compromised on many things by including the Lubavitcher Rebbe into the Gila Torah. You know that?
Right. No, I'm not aware of that. No.
Well, of course. Look, there are things that you learn by being here. As I said, I was very much around Rav Shach. As I said, he sent me on a number of important missions, if you want to call it this way. We never discussed any politics. So the question is like this: we live here in the middle of a war, and I am running the war, and let me run it, and do not tell me what to do. In addition, there is, Torah schools for Israel. You know what that is.
Yeah.
Chabad is not there. They are on their own under the Mizrahi system.
Right.
So this is just great differences in approaches, great difference in the doctrines. It has nothing to do with Chassidim Misnagdim. It has nothing to do with anything personal. As I said, there was the minute Rav Shach saw any point in which he could bring to Elis by cooperating with the Rebbe, he did.
Did Rav Shach cooperated with the Rebbe whenever it was for not political reasons? It didn't matter. Did the Rebbe reach out ever to Rav Shach for anything?
No. He never did. I can provide you with some philosophy why not, but that would be my private opinion.
Okay, so let me ask you then the following: in your opinion, and I can only ask your opinion, was there any personal animosity between Rav Shach and the Rebbe?
No.
No. And so let me follow that up with another question. Do you know if he respected him as an individual? Did he recognize him as a Gadol b'Yisrael?
Definitely not.
Interesting. And is it because of this politics that caused him to do
No.
that?
In order to be a Gadol b'Yisrael, you have to learn 18 hours a day.
He was a very big Talmud Chacham. He was a big, you could see from his...
I am not denying his being a Talmud Chacham, in particular, since I know absolutely nothing about it. But all the Gdolim, including Rav Shach and Rabbi Yashiv and Rabbi Leib Steinman and others, were learning non-stop.
And I'm curious, did Rav Shach feel the same way about other Rebbes? Because let's face it, a lot of other Rebbes don't learn 18 hours a day. It's more of a Litvische thing.
Well, I really cannot answer this question, but I definitely can say that one of the reasons for which he may not look, I can say that he did not because I don't know, but the way Rav Shach conducted his life, starting with learning and ending with learning, and running from davening to learning, from learning to davening, and taking off from learning just enough time to do whatever is absolutely necessary, is not something which was done by the Rebbe.
Right. So this is a little bit more like Rabbi Aaron's issue, which is about Torah Lishma. There's nothing greater than Torah, and there's even Hatzalas Nefashos doesn't come to
right. If you speak about Rabbi Aaron, let me tell you a little story. One day I walked into the yeshiva, and Rav Shach tells me without any reason why, tells me the Chinuch Hatzmoy is in a very bad shape. So what I answer? I told him, Rabbi Aaron, when this happened, Rabbi Aaron went out and made money. So I not the Rosh Yeshiva. You hear that?
Yeah.
You want to know what the answer was?
Yeah, what was the answer?
Ich bin nicht Rabbi Aaron.
Right. Interesting. Okay, is there anything else that you could add just to give us some color on the?
To give you some color, one of the matters that bothered him very much was publicity. Was very much against publicity in all respects, private and public.
Okay, well, he got a lot of publicity, Rav Shach, didn't he?
He got it unwillingly. Chabad works on publicity, and he did not work on publicity. I'm not talking about personal. There's not a person. I'm not saying Chaz v'Sholem that the Rebbe was interested in publicity. Chaz v'Sholem. I didn't say it. Very, very, very far from it. But Chabad, as such, conducted its business on publicity. And marches and things like this, and all this, Rav Shach was very much against.
Why was he against that?
Why? He went. Am I Rav Shach?
No, but
he was very much against. He held the decisions and the doings and the makings are within a very close circle of Gdolim. And publicity is just the other way around.
Yeah, but Rabbi Lederman, our youth, right, are assailed on a constant basis by the Freie Press, by Freie advertisements, by ads on bus stops, by multimedia. Like, don't the Fruma have to also have a sense of atzmius, of pride, of, they shouldn't say,
I hear what you are saying. You have an argument, but not only Rav Shach, but all the people who subscribe to his doctrine, who are the majority of Israel, thought differently, and they think that our youth, whatever our youth do not get from Torah, they do not get from anywhere.
So, do you not see that the Chabadske felt that he was about plucked on this?
He may have, but as far as I am concerned, look, you're asking me now about the Chabadski. That's a very unfair question, but what I can tell you is the Chabadski felt that this is the way to conduct business.
Right.
As far as they are concerned, they are, from their point of view, very right. Rav Shach held that this is not the way to conduct business. And this is a very, very kosher and proper difference of opinion.
Right. Right.
The Chabadski felt that's the way to think, and Rav Shach was very, 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 very much against. And I don't want to get into other problems that are that we have here with other kinds of things to explain to you how this reflects on other Israeli situations.
Let me ask you: do you think? And I'm going to start with a postulate, okay? But there's nobody in the world that's doing what Chabad is doing as far as kiruv. Right?
At the moment, let me say yes.
Well,
I will tell you later why.
Okay, well, it could be that maybe one day somebody will, but right now, they've established institutions. I think they're in, 150 countries, 140 countries, right? They're in every state in the United States. They were matzel. Hundreds of thousands of people have returned to tshuva because of them. The dignitaries that they are able to affect in the United States are the reason for a lot of military and financial support for Eretz Yisrael. And it's honestly hard to think of somebody in the last 100 years who's had an impact, not on Eretz Yisrael, but on worldwide Yiddishkeit, as much as the last Chabadski Rebbe. Do you think, given all that, right, and the impact that he's had, Rav Shach would look at him differently today? I'm understanding that in Eretz Yisrael they have differences of opinion. But, Eretz Yisrael has 5 million Yidden, and there's another 10 million Yidden in other parts of the world. So, given all the...
you are answering your question, you yourself are answering your question. Whatever works there does not work here. Period. Prove again what I told you. If this were true, we would have 20 Knesset representatives. If this does not happen, and we stand on their shoulders, and without their shoulders we have no rights.
And so how many Chabadskis are there in Eretz Yisrael that would make a difference of so many seats?
Even one seat.
Okay, so
even one seat.
You
don't need more than one seat to tip the scales.
One seat, if Chabad, and how many votes do you need for one seat?
You ask me a very good question, but let me answer. Let's say, died in the wood Chabad. Let's say, I really don't know. Let's say there's only 10,000. Let's say maybe there's much more. Maybe there's much less. I don't know. But if they have the influence that is claimed, they should have slept with them another 100,000. That's the point. Maybe the Chabadski do not have the number of electors even for one Chaver Knesset. Let's say, I don't know.
And that they could have slept another 100,000 people?
What? According to you, yes.
Well, in Chutz La'aretz, I don't know. In Eretz Yisrael, I have no idea how many
But in Eretz, they don't. And because of this, the real answer to everything that was said today now is, I am not in a position to judge or to evaluate or to value what the Chabadski did in Chutz La'aretz. In Israel, it doesn't work. Period.
Okay. So let me ask you another question. There are many other people in Eretz Yisrael who don't vote, who don't join, like, for example, the whole Eidah Chreidis, right?
Right.
Right. So So was Rav Shach have this level of antipathy towards, let's say, Rabbi Yisrael Yankee Fisher, to the Gaivid, Rav Weiss, to Rav Sternbuch? Like none of them vote. They could tip the scales. They could give you another seat or two seats. Did Rav Shach have their antagonism to them?
The answer is yes and no, and I will explain. The difference here, he was very much unhappy with them, with their not voting. A very Choshev Rov in Haifa spoke to Rav Shach about something, about some Chilul Shabbos here and there, and Rav Shach answered him, if the people who are supposed to vote, who could vote, would have voted, this would not have happened. That Rav was a soulmate of all the greatest people.
But
and Rav Shach was definitely antagonistic to the Haredis people, not at the level of Chabad, because they did not proceed to do things that he didn't like, the way Chabad proceeded to do things to this type. And do not forget that we started out with this discussion with the Messianic message, which nobody cares. And this sits like a cloud on top of everything else.
Thank you very much for your time.
You're very welcome.
We have on the phone with us Rabbi Chaim Dalfin, who's a noted author. He's written Lakewood and Lubavitch, Satmar and Lubavitch, individual books, Rav Hutner and Lubavitch, Rav Soloveitchik. He has a Kollel in Ramat Beit Shemesh. Welcome, Rav Dalfin.
Thank you very much.
So, Rav Chaim, let me ask you the following. You wrote Lakewood and Lubavitch. What was Reb Aaron's, if you had to give us why Reb Aaron was, quote-unquote, not enamored, or he was, I guess, a misnagid of Chabad, if you had to boil it down to 3 or 4 main philosophical issues, what would they be?
I would say the following. First, I would say the following. In 1932, the Rebbe Rayatz of Yosef Yitzchak Schneerson, the 6th Lubavitcher Rebbe, sent a letter sent money to Reb Aaron for his daughter's wedding, I believe, and he acknowledged it, and we have an actual copy of it. So my data research shows that there was a amicable relationship between himself and the Rayatz, and it's consistent with the Rayatz's relationship with the Chafetz Chaim, the Rayatz's relationship with Reb Chaim Oizer in particular, and others. When Reb Aaron came to America, April of 1941, I believe, the Rayatz was here already a year before he came in March of 1940. He had already a network of his Hasidim from the 20s working and setting up Lubavitch here in America. At that time, the Vad HaTzola was the big discussion and big issue, raising money for the Yidden, the Jews in Europe and in other places. And when the Mirayi Yeshiva and the Lubavitcher Yeshiva and the Lublini Yeshiva moved to Shanghai, first to Kobe, Japan, and then to Shanghai, there was a matter of supporting them as well. In 1942 or 43, I forget the year, it was found out by the Lubavitcher students that funds that were given by Rabbi Ephraim Fischel Epstein, who was, by the way, a brother of Rabbi Mordechai Epstein, the Rosh Yeshiva of Slobodka, Moshe Mordechai Epstein, and he had written a letter. He collected funds. And he was a Litvisher Rav, but he had, it seems like, contact with Lubavitch in Russia and good relationships.
He was a Rav in Chicago, wasn't he?
That's correct. Yeah. And he wrote the letter, and we have the actual statement of his. I put it into one of my svarim, that all B'nai Yeshiva in Shanghai should get funds. When the Lubavitcher Yeshiva Bochurim were not given the funds, they wrote to Rabbi Gerari, the Rashag, the previous Rebbe's oldest, their son-in-law, and they complained. So the Rayatz wrote a letter, and he was very upset. He wrote to Reb David Rabinowitz of Boston and others, why are his Talmidim being cut out? The two people who, at least from, what I read, is that it was Avram Kalmanovitz or Baron Kotler who spearheaded kind of the boycott of those funds to Lubavitch. Could be there were others behind the scenes, but they were in the lead role according to the documents. And this was a very contentious issue. What was Reb Aharon's position? That's you're asking me.
Yeah. What was Reb Aharon's?
I'm getting to that, but I had to give you the historical background first. Yeah. So because in my research everything goes with proof and documents. Hearsay, as you had on your last program, which I found very interesting, because also about the books and the biographies and all that. So it's important to me to find support. Anyway, so Reb Aharon felt and Reb Kalmanovitz felt very, very simple. You're doing your own thing, Lubavitcher Rebbe. Yes, you were here before and you had a group, and that's great. But you're not involved with the Vado Hatzalah HaKlali, and therefore, why should we give you funds? You're raising your own funds. That was his argument. The counter-argument is, as I said, Rabbi Epstein did not say that. He said these funds are to go to everyone. That was one legitimate disagreement.
Wait,
Number
but
two.
let me just ask you a question. Rabbi Epstein was alive, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And he was a Slobodka. His brother, the Levush Mordechai, was Rosh in Slobodka. Is it fair to say that they probably had a few conversations between him and Reb Aharon?
I don't know about his brother. If Moshe Mordechai was here, he wasn't alive at that time. He was not alive.
I'm saying Rabbi Epstein was alive.
Yeah, but his brother wasn't.
Yeah. So
you're asking.
Is it fair to say that with somebody sending money and he's the Vadat Sola, it's very likely they talk maybe 3 times a week, or certainly on occasion, right?
Yes, but I'm not sure that the money went there. I think the money went to Rabbi Ashkenazi, Meir Ashkenazi, who was...
I don't know where the money went. I'm just saying, you're saying that the letter said, give it to the people in Shanghai. So is it very likely, or very possible, that since Reb Aharon spoke to this fellow frequently, he was the head of the Vadat Sola, he was the one that he could have called him up and said, when you say the people in Shanghai, could we get a clarification? Does it mean there were Frum in Shanghai, there were Fry in Shanghai, there was the Rebbes in Shanghai, there was the Yeshiva in Shanghai? Is it possible that he asked them, which element of Shanghai do you want to send the money to?
It's possible, but I don't believe it worked that way. You're making assumptions.
I'm assuming that they spoke, that's all.
Well, you can't make assumptions.
Okay. So
in other words, what we have documents is that the money went to Rabbi Ashkenazi, and Rabbi Ashkenazi happened to be a Talmud of the Rashab, and they told Rabbi Ashkenazi that he is not to give money to Chabad. By the way, he gave money anyway, clandestinely, but officially he wasn't supposed to give, and actually later Reb Aharon wanted to take him to a Din Torah.
Right, so obviously if Reb Aharon's taking him to a Din Torah, Reb Aharon felt halachically that he was diverting tzedakah, we're not supposed to do, and I imagine that Reb Aharon, notwithstanding the letter, must have had many conversations with the donors.
It could be, but I cannot tell you and vouch for it.
Okay, so you're saying you see there already that there was an issue, but I would say, I don't know that that's so much an issue. Just if you were trying to build that there was, sort of. You start laying a foundation of an issue between Reb Aharon and Chabad based on that. I would just suggest, possibly, if I was raising money for OL orphanage, right? And somebody came to me and he said, listen, OL is a wonderful thing, but we also have, Tomchei Shabbos needs money too. I would say, besides halachically a mishanin, right? But besides that, I would say, listen, every organization has their supporters. we're raising money for Ohel. We're not raising for Tamchei Shabbos, even though it's a fantastic thing. So it doesn't mean I don't hold of Tamchei Shabbos or whatever, or Hatzalah, Relief, whatever wonderful organization we have. It just so happens our mandate of the Vadat Hatzalah was to try to save this narrow organization, was mostly to try to save the yeshivas in Eretz Yisrael. I mean, so I don't see that necessarily as any. If I was raising money for Ohel and I didn't want to give to it, doesn't mean I'm against Hatzalah, right? Or against Tamchei Shabbos. It just means that's my mandate. So I'm just commenting as an aside, a footnote.
Yes. So other issues, philosophical issues that you're asking about, was the following, and that is that, and again, I heard this from several people, that when Rabbi Aaron came, he became kind of the spokesman for, Haredi, Orthodox, frum, right-wing Yiddishkeit, Torah Yiddishkeit in America during the 40s.
Why is that? Rabbi Dalfin, you're a historian. Why is that? Why did he? There were many other people here, right? Like you say, Rav Hutner was here, Rav Soloveitchik was here, Rav Moshe Feinstein was here, you had Rav Henkin was here. Why did Rabbi Aaron suddenly become the spokesperson? What was that?
I believe two things. One is he was a fiery character with a drive and a zeal and outspoken. And number two, he really believed what he preached. Now, everyone else believed too, but they weren't outspoken. He was not scared, and he was driven, and because of that, people feared him. I mean, this I can speak about as well. But people actually feared him, and Reb Shraga Feivel Mendelovich, as an example, I'm writing now a book on Torah Vadas in Lubavitcher, I'm finishing it. Reb Shraga Feivel Mendelovich, Migodl Mimenu, what he did for American Yiddishkeit, that we all know. And when him and Rabbi Hutner had signed documents from New York State to open the American Judaism University so that boys should not get lost in Brooklyn College and other colleges, Huli, etc. And he said, I have to go to discuss this with Reb Aaron Kotler, because in the past he discussed it with Reb Chaim Oizer, who wasn't alive anymore, and Reb Aaron Kotler, and I was told this by Schneier Lehman, who heard it from his father, who was the one that made it all happen. And Rabbi Aaron Kotler spent an hour or so, and he came out. He said, "We are not doing it anymore."
Yeah,
that is powerful.
Yeah, my shver was the son of Rav Shraga Feivel.
Really?
Yeah.
Which one?
From Beis Shraga, Reb Shmuel Zochran Levrachas, right?
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah. And the way I recall, the way he would say he said that Reb Shraga Feivel, the respect that he had for Reb Aaron was, he said, Reb Aaron was already a real Rosh Yeshiva in Europe, right? So it was sort of like he was the only supplanted Rosh Yeshiva who came from Europe, who had actually a real yeshiva, a big yeshiva, respected yeshiva. That was one thing he said. So he was sort of stood b'shechmei l'mayla and all, quote unquote, the local gedolim.
Okay.
And the other thing he said, Reb Aaron, and I heard this also, Reb Aaron in learning, there was nobody who could keep up with him. Reb Nachum, I learned by Reb Nachum in the Mir, said that after he left Shanghai, he spent like a year or so in America in the Mir. He said, and Reb Aaron would come to the Mir once in a while, and Reb Nachum was a real Eli. So he said Reb Aaron would ask him to go for a walk so that he could talk to him in learning. So he said that we were learning Yavamis, and Reb Nachum knew Yavamis backwards and forwards. He says, and Reb Aaron started talking and learning. He says, Hab ich gekent mithalten bis King's Highway. It's a very short block to King's Highway, from the Mir to King's Highway. He says, I was able to keep up with his computations till King's Highway. He said, after that, I totally lost him. So Reb Nachum was an Eli himself. So it seems that in learning, I heard this Rav Savitsky he said, who was also an Eli, was a shtickle Mikurav with Chabad. He said, Reb Aaron's tfisa, he said, was like a bow shot from an arrow. It was just incredible. So they were intimidated by his Kayach HaTorah. That's what I heard from my shver. I don't know if you've heard similar things, but I'm just trying to give you, you're saying he was a Gavra Mistafina Minei, so I'm giving you maybe two another points of reference as to why.
Right. I appreciate it. Just by the way, I would say, and who am I, but I think there's only one other person who could hold cup with him. It was Rav Soloveitchik, the Rav. The Rav, as much as the right wing doesn't like the Rav, Rabbi Yasha ben Soloveitchik was the top.
Okay. Right, so let's go back to it. So Rabbi Aaron, you're saying they may or may not have had a disagreement about the Vad. It seems they did, but we don't know that it was a sort of any type of a political disagreement, except as a Mishana Mitzedakah or Tzedakah maybe disagreement. But what was ideologically, what was differences between Rabbi Aaron and Chabad?
I'm getting to I was making the point. So Rabbi Aaron became the spokesman. He became the point man. He was the gadol. He was the individual. The Rayatz didn't accept that. Simply, the Rayatz was a Rebbe. He wasn't a Lubavitcher gadol. The Rayatz had an entire network of not just yeshivas and chadorim, but askonis, and it's so much recorded in his letters. So he wasn't going to, ask Rabbi Aaron, besides that he was older than Rabbi Aaron, for an opinion. And I believe that really bothered not only Rabbi Aaron, but the establishment.
Okay, but were there any? This would make it a little bit more on a personal level. Are there any ideological, not personal differences that you would, you know what I mean?
Well, so the third Nakuda, the third point, is Rabbi Aaron was a Slabotka Talmud, and like Rabbi Nosson Kamenetsky told me when I asked him about Rabbi Yankel Kamenetsky's opinion of Hasidus in general, not only Chabad Hasidus in general, and he said my father wasn't a Mesnagid. He was indifferent. He didn't care for it. They didn't talk to him. And I asked him, was that the sentiment in Slabotka? He told me yes. This is what Reb Nosson said that his father said. That it wasn't that anyone spoke against Hasidim or Chassidus in Slabotka, but that it was small change. It's not where it's at. Maram Shif and Reb Chaim and Reb Baruch Ber, and Musar is where it's at. So Reb Aaron, I believe, had a similar feeling, However, these other issues, which, you say is more personal, they exacerbated the issue where it became butting heads between the Rayatz and Reb Aaron. But I think philosophically, he wasn't, I know the Olam side, the Chabad Olam side, the Lubavitcher Olam in the past has said, he was a big besnagid to Chassidus Chabad. I'm not sure if he was a besnagid to Chassidus Chabad or he was indifferent. Outwardly, definitely he had the feelings and vibes of Misnagdishkeit.
Rabbi Dalfin, you're a historian. I've heard, and I'm not a historian, that Rabbi Aaron had a shita in Lakewood, B'chayev, no streimels in the yeshiva, and no mikveh in the yeshiva.
Correct.
Is that true?
That is true. That is true. I verified it. So
is it fair to say that Rabbi Aaron's view of the world of Yiddishkeit is that it's terasayum nasai, that there's nothing, it's the Eidai Bolvade is the concept of Torah Lishma is the most important thing in the world, and he didn't want to bring in anything that could sort of be a red herring, lead people away from that. So he didn't want mikvahs or streimels. He didn't want university. In other words, it's learning and Torah Lishma, and that's all. Is that fair? Is that probably like the core of what?
I wrote that.
And to a certain
I wrote
extent,
that in the book.
And Chabad certainly has a very different philosophical outlook than Torah Lishma is the essence of what Yiddishkeit is supposed to be. Is that fair to say? That would be an ideological difference.
Well, the latter statement I can't agree with. The first part of your statement I agree with. That Aaron's, he didn't want, as we say, Chassidische Belava Malkus in Lakewood. Gewollt lernen, learning Lishma, and that's it. as far as how Chabad understands Torah Lishma, it's a very long discussion, and it's not for now.
Yeah,
I can't say I agree with you the way you phrased it.
Well, let me give you an example. If according to Rabbi Aaron's values of Torah Lishma, right?
Yes.
Would it be fair to say that he didn't want mikveh for that reason? He didn't want streimels. He didn't want university. I'm sure it would, or it stands to reason in line. He wouldn't want mitzvah tanks, right? He wouldn't want guys leaving yeshiva at a young age to go to far-flung areas of the world, albeit, right, for kiruv, right? So when you can't have this is. If the most important thing in your mitzias is Torah Lishma, the most important things means other very important things just aren't the most important thing. So is it fair to say that when we talk about Torah Lishma, we're saying in Chabad Avad, Torah Lishma is a big thing, but it is not the thing, and by Rabbi Aaron it was the thing, and this caused the chasm?
I'll answer it this way. The Hefeiru Torah Secha in Chabad since the Rayatz's time and our Rebbe's time, Hefeiru Torah Secha has put a hold on the Torah Lishma emphasis.
Right, and that's worth discussing. Could you elucidate? Tell us, open up this topic a little bit.
Well, the Rebbe Rayatz made a yeshiva. When he came to America in 1940 at 770 Eastern Parkway in Crown Heights, the Lubavitcher Yeshiva Teim Mimim, which was so successful in Rusland, and then the Chadorim and the Machteres, the underground yeshivas, and he brought it here. And some of the best Talmidim of Torah Vadas, Reb Meir Greenberg, Reb Mendel Feldman, these are names that are known in the Olam HaYeshivas of Torah Vadas. They started to learn Chassidus with Rabbi Yisrael Jacobson in the 30s, and they gravitated it, and some of them actually went to Otwock, to the Lubavitcher Yeshiva in Poland, which was there since 1935, and then when the war broke out, everyone ran away. But they went 2 weeks before, and then they saved themselves, and they came back to America. So his best Talmidim, the best Talmidim became the first Talmidim of the yeshiva. With them, the yeshiva was founded. And then the Rayatz sent them to open day schools. By the way, before the Shraga Feivel, it started in 1941 or 42, but that's for another time, another discussion. Anyway, so he sent them out, and yes, it was Rabbi Aaron and others, and Reb Shraga Feivel I heard as well. They didn't agree with it. They said, on the contrary, if they're shaykh to godless, the greatness in Torah, why are you sending them away? But the Rayat sets a Brenta fire, and the Yiddish Kinder all over the United States, we have to save them. And so he was Meiser Nefesh, he sent them. Our Rebbe took a generation of people came from Russia, and families were wiped out, communism got to family members, and he rebuilt from nothing in the 1950s, and he started with his own Hasidim, men and women. And that grew, and my father got involved in Lubavitch in 1950 as a boy in Eretz Yisrael, and it was in Morocco, and it was in Eretz Yisrael, learning. I'll give you, you speak about Torah Lishma. My father learned by Rav Shlomo Chaim Kesselman, who was the Mashpia in Lud and then Kfar Chabad in the 1950s. It was all about learning and davening. There was no running around. They're putting on film with Yidden. Okay, then in 55, 56, 57, they started to go out to the kibbutzim, and then it was Faratzta came in 58. But the primary thing was to learn and daven. They raised real Talmidei Chachamim, and the same in France, in the Lubavitcher Yeshiva in the 50s in France, and every single one can discuss Ktsas and the Sivas backwards and forwards. I know the people, I know they've discussed with Lederman Bacharim at the airport. They stand to put on tefillin, and when Lederman Bacharim come by and they start speaking Ktsas, and the guy doesn't know, I can't believe it. You're standing here putting on tefillin, and you know Ktsas better than me. So there was a seriousness to learning Torah Lishma. However, when there was this fire, the Rebbe said that you have to have Mesiras Nefesh. Obviously, Reb Aaron and others felt otherwise. There was a legitimate machlokes, disagreement.
Well, they say over. I've heard this so many times when I was in yeshiva.
Yeah.
They say that from Rabbi Yisrael Salanta, as a yeshiva bacha sitzt to learn tablat Gemara, is a Yid in Paris tut nicht an Avera.
Okay.
It was sort of that the core of Klal Yisrael is Torah Lishma, is Limud HaTorah. And if we do our Limud HaTorah, the Rabbeinu Shalom, and or the waves, the energy from it will sort of spread through the world. And this is clearly an area where Chabad disagrees. Is that fair to say?
Yes. But again, not that there's any less importance to Torah Lishma. It's mitzat hefeiru Torah secha, so you put the Torah Lishma on hold.
Oh, so it is a difference. They hold Torah Lishma can never be put on hold, and they hold, and Chabad holds that in a time of I think we had a guest, one of our guests once say, he said if your brother's house is on fire, you don't say, let me learn a Blat Gemara, you go with a fire extinguisher.
Exactly.
So, but they held that the Torah holds up the world, and therefore if you're learning, the fire will go out. It's a very big ideological difference, right?
Yes. By the way, what you said earlier about the mikveh and the shtreimels, you know that if Schneier, he took over, he changed all that. You know that, right?
Yeah, but I'm curious whether he would regret it or not. And why do I say it? I say that if you go to Lakewood today, it's very different than when Rabbi Aaron was there. When even when I was there, it changed dramatically. The city used to be like really the Yungalite were the star, the Talmidei Chachamim were the stars. But now already you have bells and the crown of Rabbi Aaron's dream, which was the like you said, the young man who could talk all day, and once you open up the gates, there are fancy homes and fancy shopping centers, and it's the spark of Torah, of pure and clean Torah, is a dover that's really not from this world, right? It comes from that is the spark of Torah, and it's very easy to dilute it with Gashmias. It's very easy to dilute it with all kinds of Weltanschauungs, with
absolutely.
So if you would ask me, I just wonder if Reb Schneier came to Lakewood today, or a Baron came, and they would say, why did you open the gates? There's 50 states and there's 10,000 townships in America. Couldn't we have one township with a Yungalite with a star, where if a younger man is living on his $10,000 a year banias, he doesn't have to have his kishka reiskiris and by the guy next door building a 20-story building. Like there is something very beautiful, and it's only one place in America. Why can't we keep it pristine? So when you say Reb Schneier changed it, I just asked the question out there: was it or was it not a good thing?
I hear you, and I'm not in the position really to answer that, but I hear your argument, and it makes sense. I hear it.
Could you think of another ideological disagreement with Rabbi Aaron and Chabad?
My research points to Rabbi Aaron having more respect for the last Rebbe of Lubavitch, or what we call today's Rebbe, our Rebbe, versus the Ramash is before he was called Ramash before he became Rebbe. The Rebbe versus the Frierdiker Rebbe, okay. And the reason for that, I believe, is if you compare the two matzevis at the Ohel, there's one difference between the two. Almost all the words are the same. By the Rebbe, they added the word Hagoyin Ho'eliki, because the Rebbe in learning was a Goyin Olam. Pashut in learning, Nigla, Gemara, Halacha, Tzos, and he stood out in that area, and the Reb Aaron respected that, as you could imagine, and that's why he had, I think, less issues with him than with the Rayats. As far as
how do you see that? How would you document that? Like, give me an example.
I documented it because in 1960 there was a meeting which the Shag, Rabbi Garari, by the way, worked very well with Rabbi Aaron because of the arts program, and I don't know if it was called arts then, but the yeshiva, funding, different funding that the yeshivas were getting or trying to get, and I spoke to Moshe Bogomilsky, who was helping the Rashag, who told me this. So he told me that at one meeting he was there, and Rabbi Aaron turned to the Rashag and he said, "Was sagt Eier Schwager wegen dem?" And he said it in a respectful way. He again, he's not a chassid, but in other words, he wanted to hear what the daya of the Rebbe was. I mean, that was one thing.
What was the topic?
The topic was it wasn't a topic in learning. It was a topic of whether we should get reparations. I think it was about reparations. I don't recall, or maybe he didn't tell me the details. But it was about some issue that the Lubavitcher Yeshiva, which was directed by Rabbi Garari and Rabbi Aaron, were working on together. And he suddenly turned and he wanted to know what was the Rebbe's opinion. Now, he obviously knew that Rabbi Garari checked everything with the Rebbe, and discussed everything and wanted his final approval. So Rabbi Aaron wanted to know, and Rabbi Bogomolsky told me it was done. He said it not in a condescending way, but in a respectful way. I'd like to hear what your brother-in-law, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, says about it.
Mm-hmm. Was there a difference, Rabbi Dalfin, that Rabbi Aaron was opposed to? Very fiery opposed to sending single Bachrim places. Besides going to different areas, he felt that certainly when they're Bachrim, before they become mamish eingesalzen and learn, he said, even if you hold of a Feiru Terasecha, Eislasis Hashem, a single Bachar should never be put in a place where it could compromise his steiging. Do you have any background on that?
I didn't find research to the emphasis that you're making of single Bacharim. What I heard was that he was opposed to Bacharim and young people who should be learning. The bottom wanted them to continue learning all their life, but after they get married. So to say that the emphasis was because they're single and they can get ruined, because of this, they're not married. If that's what you're asking me about, that I didn't hear.
Now, what about as far as, let's say, the Rayats had a big program, Alta Legeula.
Okay. And you're asking if Aaron was opposed to that. It's interesting.
The whole emphasis on the Alta Legeula. What did your study show?
So what I study shows like this, that the Chazoin Ish, I believe, who had an issue with that, although we have a document where he gave money. He gave money, actually, we have his name, he gave money in 1943 or 44 to the Lubavitcher Yeshiva there. But my understanding is that he heard that in America, Rabbi Aaron and some of the other Gedolim and Rosh Yeshivas were very upset about this whole campaign, so he kind of also got upset. I did come across that. But at the same time, I'm not sure if it was, the Alta Geula campaign that was the trigger. I think it was more another issue in the early 40s. He came out, the Rayats had a newspaper called Hakriya Vagdusha from 41 to 45, which was to build the Emunah in Yidden who were losing it because of the Holocaust. It wasn't under Lubavitch, it was under, just a separate name, but the Olam knew who was behind it. And in there were Maimorim that the Rayats wrote on certain Mishnahs, like a Kavya b'Mahalal Oimer. And he brought the taich that a Kavya is a heel, Mloshen Ekev, ben Mahalal, Mloshen Hilul. So the piyata, that even the heel of a Yid gives praise to the Eibishter. And Valderach Zeh, Elam Etzia Shaloi, Shnayim Eichim B'Talis, two people are holding a neshama, Zeh Mekudashali, they're arguing, I made him a Bal Tshuva, and the Olam HaTorah, Aaron and others, they had an issue with this because they felt that he's like They felt that he's kind of insulting a serious Mishnah, piece of Gemara, and he's making small change of it. Drayatz wasn't at all coming from there. He was talking to a broken Welt and to Hamaratzim and to simple people, and he wanted to give them Hisaydus. So he used Chazal to give him Hisaydus. But this really upset Reb Shlomo Haim, and I heard also was upset. And Reb Shlomo Haim was already a very passive type of person, but this bothered him. So this was a big issue in the early 40s, and I really believe that this was a trigger for Reb Aaron, and he said, we can't go along with this.
And was that also a shor shenagach esapara, I believe, that was Torah.
Yes, that whole, yes.
Shor of Merkava, shenagach, the shor of Natzilas.
Yeah, exactly.
So he was taking sugyas that for them were very real and very halacha, very chayshim mishpat, and turning it into like Hasidus, and was a little bit sort of, again, it's rubbing on the Torah Lishma element.
I guess you could put it that way. You know, I didn't see it put that way, but it was they felt kind of too much feeding into the simple folk. So yes, you could I'm thinking it's like going back to the times of the Balatanya and the Gro and those times. It was like the Chilukei Deis. Do you look at a Yid as a Ben Torah, and a Ben Torah is everything, and someone who's not a Ben Torah is a second-class citizen, is a second tier. Or the Toras HaBaal Shem Tov, especially as elaborated by the Balatanya, the Alter Rebbe, Reb Shneur Zalman, named the Iker is the Neshama. And in Perek Lamed Beis and Tanya says it can go to Zion that the person's, the simple person's Neshama is higher, greater than the Ben Torah. Oy vey, that caused,
Well, Rabbi Dalfin, the Misil Shisharim and the Shara Kedusha already writes how the simple person, the tailor who does his work, right, and does it l'shem shamayim in the most beautiful way, who knows how great he could be, greater than somebody who's learning, right? So it's not necessarily Hasidus or the Tzaddik came before Hasidus. I think it's probably the issue is more that they felt that to make drush and divrei chizuk out of Arba Avos Nezikin and Shor Shenagach Esapara and sugyas in learning, was something that to them was inappropriate, more than Pashat the Yid. Even if the biggest Lamdan did it, they probably would have been upset. So is that possible that it's more that than of the Pashat Yid versus a not Pashat Yid?
Yes, it is. But I can just tell you, but Havi Uvda, I'm from the 60s, 70s, etc. I could. And I'm not saying this Chashem to brag. I mean, I learned Nigla when I was a bocher to 3 a.m. I mean, just to see this. I knew Gemara Balpeh. I mean, I was B'toichat Dvarim, Kol Kuli. In Lubavitch, they learned 7 hours, and they wouldn't go to the bathroom. Straight Nigla. So to say that the Rayatz, the Chavraya were belittling and thought of Gemara any less than of Kedusha than Reb Aaron the Chavraya, I don't agree. None of us then. The appeal and the marketing of it. Okay, let's use today's term. The marketing of it was what was different, and Reb Aaron didn't agree to the marketing of it.
Could you think of any other ideological differences?
No, I mean, some want to argue that the Mashiach issue, but I don't believe that was Reb Aaron. That I don't think that was an issue at the time. No, I wouldn't say so.
No, I'll tell you that when I learned in Lakewood, the Mashkiach Yissachar and Lubavitcher Rebbe used to have a suitcase packed that is at all times near him. If Mashiach comes, he has his clothing and his whatever he needs to go with Mashiach to Eretz Yisrael. And I've heard from when I was in Lakewood, I heard that they woke him. Something woke him up middle of the night. It was like a stun, and he jumped up. He ran to grab his suitcase. He says, "Sheinda." So I don't know that necessarily that would have been an issue. I'm just asking as a question.
Yeah.
Chaim, do you have anything else you would like to add on to this?
To this whole discussion?
Yeah, discussion. And when I say discussion, to me, it's like the Rashi says in Baloischa. He says that the Machloikesen von Yidden kommen von Räumemus, nicht von Shiflus.
Right.
Each one had, we were talking about Gedolei Olam, and they had different, Hashkafik. So it's more about understanding the Hashkafik of each one, and by understanding it, we can get enriched.
I agree.
So could you think
I agree, and that's the general mahalach of my books. What you just said now, that's the mahalach. I want to understand both sides. I'm not looking for lashon hara. That's not. But to understand both sides, not both sides. You have to discuss it, and you have to try to understand where is he coming from. Where is he coming from? I just want to. You asked me what else I want to say that this. Today, so many years later, but you said, you asked me for what if Rabbi Aaron and Rabbi Shneur were back and they looked at Lakewood. But I want to say, I think you once had on Rabbi Aaron Cutler, the CEO, named after Zayda. I heard that program of yours, and it was an interesting, discussion, very interesting. I want to say that whether the mahalach is to build mini kollelim as he espoused at that program, whether the mahalach is to open Chabad houses. Today, I could say what the Rebbe said for years, there's no more misnagdim, and I really believe that, and that's the case. That Baruch Hashem, that era is finished. There's some emphasize this and some emphasize there, but Baruch Hashem, Klal Yisrael, whether it be Litvische and Chassidische, whether it be Satmar and Lubavitch, things that I write about, we've really, Baruch Hashem, I feel, have come to a place where we're all contributing in a positive way, and there's a lot better relationships, and that's the way it should be. Do you agree or disagree with what I just said?
So, I'm not sure, and I'll tell you why. Okay, Rav Hutton Zechar Levrachet, he said, Samol geven a Yid in Varsha, right? He was a great Gevir. So he had two Adams. He took two best Adams. One only ate milchiks, and one only ate fleishiks, right? Et genommen ein Adam et geven a goy heißen Reb Shaya milchige.
Yeah.
And he only ate milchiks, and they made for him a bazundere milchige kich. They made his own milchige kitchen.
Yeah.
And they ate it, and the other one had a fleischiger, a Mendel, a fleischiger, he had it his kich, and he would learn in his kitchen. They never ate together. What happened? The Shver became a yored, he lost his money. And instead of giving this one, rich cheeses, and mit alamine lokshen, and milk, and bechulu, and this one given gebrotne leberlach, and who knows what, he gave potatoes.
Yes.
So one day Reb Shaya meets Reb Mendel. He says, "Als ich hab gehad alle meine Käse mit Milchiks, und du hast gehad gebrotene Leber, hast du gegessen, you ate in your kitchen and I ate with my kitchen. Today, all we have is potatoes. Is Lame Essen zusammen." Right? So Hutton said it.
Yeah.
He said, the Machleikes, Chassidim, and Litvaks, I'm also given the Goyim from Vilna, and to given Rabbi Yisrael Bar Shem. He said, "Hi, all my essence is let's eat together." So, on one hand, it's a beautiful thing, but on the other hand, it comes from poverty. Like if there was another Baal Shem, and there was another Vilna Goy, and they would go to their separate kitchens. So that separateness, again, comes from an area of greatness and Ashiras and Das, right? Comes from Roimamus, not from Anias. So I think in a matzav of Anias, it's good that we get together, but recognize that it does mean that we have less of our own greatness and diversity.
I hear you. It's a good point.
So I don't know. I certainly as Mizan Noram Alights all Essen zusammen. There's no doubt.
Yes, for sure.
Well, thank you very much for your time.
Bye-bye.
The winners to last week's riddle are Shlomi Kogan and Avram Weiss. We had a number of winners, but we sort of did a goyrel, and these are the ones we came up with, and they will be receiving the new Sefer, and we look forward to next week's winners.
Yeah, hi. I just want to give some answers to the riddles that were asked. The first riddle was asked that the Gemara says the Kash on the Ramban. The Ramban holds that Yishuv Eretz Yisrael, the mitzvah Hasei. Was trying the Gemara and Sotah Afidal that says that it's Av Moshe Rabbeinu Konos Eretz Yisrael, and he said because of Harbi mitzvahs in Stav Yisrael, the Ein Miskayim El Eretz Yisrael, Achayr the mitzvahs Yishuv Eretz Yisrael. So why did he have to say all the mitzvahs? So the Meshech Chochmah in Parshas Re'eh, first Meshech Chochmah in Parshas Re'eh, Perek Yud Aleph Pasuk Lamed Aleph, he says that it's Muchach from here, from the Pasuk over there in Parshas Re'eh, Virash the Moshe V'Shavtim, but the mitzvahs Yishuv Eretz Yisrael even in Eber HaYarden. Therefore, Moshe Rabbeinu didn't ask to go to Eretz Yisrael because of mitzvahs Yishuv Eretz Yisrael, because he had already the mitzvahs Yishuv Eretz Yisrael in Eber HaYarden. And I heard this answer also B'Shem Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky once. That's one answer. And even if you want to argue and say there's no mitzvahs Yishuv Eretz Yisrael in Eber HaYarden, you could say a teretz al pi what's involved in the Tashbitz and Chel Gimel and Rosh, that the mitzvahs Yishuv Eretz Yisrael, even according to Ramban, that the mitzvahs Yishuv Eretz Yisrael, the etzem yeshiva is not the mitzvah. The yisoid of the mitzvahs Yishuv Eretz Yisrael is al yidei zeh you can be kind the mitzvahs al police ba'aretz. The lashon of the Tashbitz is a few lashonis, but one of them is chiyav halozu the mitzvahs dira ene elu pnei ha mitzvahs hanoyeges ba. And the Beis Halevi says also that this is Pshat Tosis of Chaim Kohen Ksubis that says that there's no mitzvahs Yishuv Eretz Yisrael b'zman hazeh because a lot of mitzvahs al police ba'aretz you don't have anymore. What's the shaykh? Because there's no mitzvah Klus Ba'aretz, why should that be that there's no mitzvah Yishuv Eretz Yisrael? So Levi says, because the whole tachlis, the whole Yisrael of the mitzvah Yishuv Eretz Yisrael is in kind of mitzvahs. So if he's there, you could say that's found in the Ramban, that the Ramban holds that the whole tachlis of the mitzvah Yishuv Eretz Yisrael is to be kind of mitzvahs. So the Meilu, that's Pshat Moshe Rabbeinu. That's why Moshe Rabbeinu said that he wanted to be kind of mitzvahs, and he didn't say that he wanted to be kind of mitzvahs Yishuv Eretz Yisrael, because the whole tachlis of the mitzvah Yishuv Eretz Yisrael is not a tachlis of Pnei, it's only to be kind of mitzvahs. That's when he gave the first riddle. Then he gave the second riddle about what's the chiluk between a roife and a rav and a shliach bezdin. So the Tosefta that you mentioned, the Saki Gepaskins in Shulchan Aruch, and the Aruch HaShulchan Taka says on the spot that Avadi have to say that it's only if the roife was misrashel. Abalamaisa, the other Achronim say different terutzim. Happens to be that the Tashbitz, ironically, the Tashbitz a few chuvas away from the chuva that I mentioned before, also asked the Kash, and he says Posh Yesh L'Chalik. So there's basically a mahalach from the Birkei Yosef and other Achronim that they say that is a chiluk that by a rav or by a shliach bezdin when they give the makkis. So even if they end up killing the person, the ma'aseh was a mitzvah in the etzem makkis that they gave. Mashing by roife, if he ended up being mazik the person, and it comes out that the ma'aseh that he did to be merafim wasn't a ma'aseh mitzvah. So Mela he could go to Golos. Kama achronim, and that's could be pshat in the Tashbitz. I'm just going to end off that the Guyoni Hashas in Mesechtes Brachas says another two interesting teruts into the Shaila. He says that, first of all, he said one teretz he says is that if the Kollel would be misrapah by himself, there wouldn't be a mitzvah to be mirapim. The whole mitzvah to mirapim is only because that's the only way to get better. So Zakter, in the male, it's considered a hechsher mitzvah. In the right to that's the one chiddush that he says. And the second chiddush he says, he brings the Ramban, beginning Parshas B'chukoyse, along the Ramban says that if somebody has richtig emunah in Hashem and he goes shalei al pi derech hateva and he's trusting Hashem, he doesn't need a roife. So in the male, the whole mitzvah that a roife has is ain't a mitzvah kol kach. He says, from the male, since it's not a mitzvah kol kach, the male it's not going to be considered a mitzvah to be potter from Golos. So those are the three mahalchim to Miyashiv, the second riddle. Thank you very much, Kol Tov.
Yeah, I'd like to answer the two questions that you raised. Question number one, why, if there's a mitzvah of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael, why didn't Moshe Rabbeinu ask to go in because of the mitzvah? He only asked because of the kind of mitzvahs Hatlus Ba'aretz. There are a number of terutzim. The Meshech Chochmah, there are Samech in Parshas Re'eh, there's a teretz that the mitzvah Yishuv Eretz Yisrael is before there was kibush v'chiluk, you would be able to be mekayim in Ever HaYarden. It says there by Bnei Gad u'Bnei Reuven v'harashtem es oretz v'yishavtem. So technically, he didn't have to ask for Kiyum Yishuv Eretz Yisrael. He had it in Ever HaYarden. Meir Don Pletz, the one who wrote the Chemdes Yisrael, says that at least he has a suffix that possibly, since the Torah says "V'snachaltem es haaretz," Shevet Levi never took a chelik in Eretz Yisrael. They maybe don't have a mitzvah of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael, which is a big chiddush. So, what Moshe Rabbeinu only asked for mitzvahs hatluyos b'aretz. But then he questions, perhaps since they took Ori Midrash, that might be sufficient. And also where Noshim didn't take a chelik b'aretz, and it's mistaber that they also have a mitzvah of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael. There's also the Tzopnas Paneach and Parshas V'aschanan. And want to say also that could be the whole fear of mitzvah Yishuv Eretz Yisrael is because of the mitzvah of kibush. If you don't have kibush, you're not mitzvah in kibush, and Shevet Levi and Noshim were not b'chlal kibush, so they weren't b'chlal the mitzvah of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael. Regarding the question of what's the difference between a reife who kills by accident and he goes in golus, even though a reife has a mitzvah to heal, and a father who's teaching his son also has a mitzvah, and if he hits him too hard, or a shlich bezin to enforce bezin, or according to the Rabbi, talking about the person gives a little bit hard. Somebody was Chaim Malchus, hits him a little bit too hard. It's also a mitzvah. So what's the difference? The basic difference is that a job of a reife is to heal. And so healing is the meiser mitzvah. And if he kills, he does something that's for not healing. That's even though he's trying to heal, that's not an act of healing. A father or a shlich bezin has a mitzvah to hit, with seichel, of course. So that act is an act of mitzvah. It's a meiser mitzvah. And you can do this to make him learn. Same thing with a shlich bezin. He's doing his job. Whatever he's doing, what he's doing is a meiser mitzvah. Whether or not you learn shlich bezin and he's hitting a person who was Chaim Malchus, and he hit him maybe a little bit too hard, or according to the Rambam. But either way, by Shanken, by a father or by a shlich bezin, the act that he's doing is a mitzvah. Just he did it a little bit too hard, and that causes the person to die. And I think if you look in the Yad Avram, it's printed in Moshe Shulchan Shin Lamed Vav, at the beginning of Sif Aleph, and also there's a Sefer B'Sam Rosh with some says from the Rosh and Shin Pei Vav. I think this is what they really meant to say. Okay, sei gesund.